My name is Lena Carter. I'm 32 years old, and the night my sister stood on a stage and called herself self-made, I was standing in the back of the room holding the one thing that could quietly undo everything she had built. The ballroom lights were too bright, the kind that smooth everything out and make success look effortless. Crystal glasses caught the glow from above, conversations blurred into a soft, confident hum, and people laughed like they belonged there, like they had earned it. Claire loved rooms like this. She stood on stage like she had always been meant to stand there, one hand resting lightly on the podium, shoulders relaxed, smile controlled in a way that felt practiced rather than natural. She didn't look nervous. She didn't hesitate. She looked exactly like someone who believed her own story. "And I just want to say," she continued, her voice steady and clear, "none of this came from shortcuts. No handouts, no safety nets. I built this myself." The applause came instantly, loud, certain, admiring. People leaned forward as they clapped, nodding as if they were witnessing something admirable, something earned. It filled the room in a way that made everything else disappear for a moment. I didn't clap. I was standing 3 rows from the back, half hidden behind a column, my phone already unlocked in my hand. On the screen was a system dashboard, clean and precise, the kind of interface I had spent years working with. Active sessions, access logs, file permissions. Claire Carter, logged in. Still, even now. I watched her smile widen slightly as the applause continued. She placed a hand over her chest, tilting her head just enough to suggest humility, like she was overwhelmed by recognition. I had seen that expression before, in smaller moments, in mirrors, in reflections when she thought no one was paying attention. She didn't look like someone who was about to lose control, but she was. Because 30 seconds earlier, while she was talking about having no safety nets, I had already removed the one she didn't even realize she was still standing on. I didn't interrupt her speech dramatically. I didn't raise my voice or try to pull attention toward me. I just spoke. "Then you won't need the access I just revoked." It wasn't loud, but it carried. The microphone caught just enough of it for the words to reach the room. The applause didn't fade. It stopped. Completely. Claire's smile didn't disappear right away. It shifted just slightly, like something fragile cracking under pressure. She scanned the room, her eyes moving quickly, searching for where the voice had come from. When she found me, something in her expression tightened. Confusion first, then recognition, then something sharper. "Lena?" she said, still smiling, still trying to hold the moment together. "What are you talking about?" I stepped forward into the light. "Your access," I said, lifting my phone slightly. "The one you're going to need for tomorrow's client demo." Silence settled over the room. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that makes people shift in their seats, that makes them look at each other without speaking, waiting for something to make sense. Claire let out a quick, controlled laugh. "She's joking," she said, waving her hand lightly. "My sister helped early on. Everyone has someone in the beginning." A few people chuckled, not because it was funny, but because it gave them something to hold on to. I didn't smile. I tapped my screen. "Active session terminated," I said evenly. "File access revoked. Permissions removed." Claire's eyes flicked, not to me, but to the large screen behind her. The presentation was still open, frozen on the last slide, but I knew what she was thinking, because I knew what that system controlled. Client data, financial projections, performance reports, Everything she needed to prove she deserved to be standing there. Everything that had her name on it, and my work underneath it. "You didn't," she started, her voice lower now. I tilted my head slightly. "I did." Something shifted in the room. It wasn't loud, but it was real. That subtle change when people realize they might not be watching what they thought they were watching. Claire straightened, pulling herself back into control. "Okay," she said lightly. "We'll handle that later." She turned back toward the audience, resetting her posture. "Anyway, as I was saying," her hand moved to the laptop on the podium. She clicked. Nothing happened. She clicked again. Still nothing. There was a pause, small but undeniable. "Let's just pull up the live dashboard," she said quickly. "That'll show." She typed. The wrong password. She tried again, slower this time. Still wrong. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment too long. "Claire?" someone near the front asked. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just a minor technical issue." She tried again, and even though the audience couldn't see the words, I knew what appeared on her screen. Access denied. I didn't move. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Because once the truth starts to surface, it doesn't need help. It moves on its own. Claire looked up again, scanning the room, trying to find a way back into control, a way to reshape what was happening into something manageable. Then she looked at me. "You helped early on," she said again. But this time it didn't sound confident. It sounded necessary. I met her gaze. "Check the logs," I said. That was all. No speech, no explanation. Because the logs didn't care about stories. They didn't care about family or intention or perception. They recorded what happened, when, and who did it. And my name was everywhere. 14 months earlier, Claire had called me at 11:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had already turned off the lights and put my phone down. My laptop was closed, and I had just settled into that quiet space where the day feels finished. My phone lit up anyway. Claire. I stared at it for a moment before answering. Late calls from Claire meant something had gone wrong. "Hey," I said, already sitting up. "I need a favor," she said immediately. "Of course you do." I didn't say that. "What kind of favor?" I asked. "Temporary," she said quickly. "Just temporary." That word didn't mean anything to me yet. It sounded manageable, limited, safe. "I just landed a huge client," she continued. "This could change everything." There was excitement in her voice, the kind that makes you want to believe in it before you question it. "I need access to a system," she said. "Just for a couple of weeks. Ours isn't ready yet." "Access to what?" I asked. "Your firm's analytics platform," she said. "Just to run projections. Presentable data. Nothing complicated." I hesitated. "Claire, that's not exactly something I can just—" "I know," she cut in. "I know. But I wouldn't ask if I had another option." There was a pause. Then her voice softened. "I'm so close, Lena. I just need to get through this deal." I leaned back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. Claire had always been like this, always reaching for something bigger, always just one step away from making it work. And I had always been the one making sure things didn't fall apart behind her. "What exactly do you need?" I asked. Her relief came instantly. "Just login access," she said. "I won't mess anything up, I promise." Temporary. Just a couple of weeks. Just one deal. That's how it started. The first time I stayed up until 3 in the morning fixing her data, she sent me a voice message. "You're saving me," she said, laughing softly. "I'll pay you back before anyone even knows." Before anyone even knows. I didn't think about that part. I focused on the work, because the work made sense. Data either aligned or it didn't. Systems either worked or they broke. There was clarity in that. Control. It was easier to fix something structured than to question why I was the one fixing it. Weeks turned into a month turned into 3. Every time I asked when she would stop using my access, she had an answer. After this contract. Next quarter. Once things stabilize. Always close. Always almost done. And every time something broke, she called me. Not her team, not her partners, me. At first, it felt like helping. Then it felt like responsibility. Then it became something heavier, because the more I did, the more effortless her success looked. Clean, impressive, self-made, and the more invisible my part became. At family dinners, my mother would smile at Claire and say she had always been driven. My father would nod and talk about how she built everything from the ground up, and I would sit there quietly, thinking about the reports I had fixed the night before, the numbers I had corrected, the errors no one else had seen. "She's just helping a little," Claire said once when I tried to explain I was overwhelmed. "Aren't you?" my mother added gently. Gently. Like it was obvious. Like it was nothing. I stopped correcting them after that, because every time I tried, it felt like I was interrupting something important. Claire's moment. Claire's story. And in our family, you didn't take that away. You supported it. Quietly. The first time I realized it wasn't just help anymore was the night I saw my name attached to something I hadn't done. It came through as a system alert. Routine. Easy to ignore. Except it didn't make sense. Because the activity flagged wasn't mine. It was Claire's. Using my credentials. Accessing data under my authorization. Submitting reports tied directly to my account. I stared at the screen for a long time, because this wasn't just about helping anymore. This was risk. Real risk. If something went wrong, if there was an audit, if a client questioned anything, it wouldn't trace back to her. It would trace back to me. My login, my name, my responsibility. I called her the next morning. "Claire, we need to talk about the account." She sighed. I know. I was going to bring it up." "When?" I asked. "Soon," she said. "I just need a little more time." A little more time. "I'm serious," I said. "This can't keep going." "Lena," she said, softer now. "I'm almost stable." Almost. "I just need 1 more month." I closed my eyes. 1 more month. Always 1 more. That should have been the moment I stopped. The clean moment. The logical moment. But I didn't. Because part of me still believed her. And part of me was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. Not to her, but to everything. To the version of our family that only worked because I kept things running in the background. So I stayed. I fixed. I adjusted. I covered. And she kept rising. Until she was standing on that stage, smiling, calling herself self-made. And I was standing in the back of the room, watching the system finally stop working without me. The first thing that disappeared wasn't her speech. It was her control. Claire was still standing on stage, still holding the room physically, but something invisible had shifted. No one had stood up, no one had interrupted, and the music hadn't changed, but people were watching differently now. Not admiring, but measuring. There's a very specific kind of silence that settles in when admiration turns into doubt, and I had lived inside that silence for months. I just hadn't seen it directed at her before. Someone near the front suggested taking a short break, his voice controlled, trying to contain the moment without acknowledging it. Claire caught on to that instantly, agreeing too quickly, stepping away from the podium with just a little too much force as she closed her laptop. Then she walked straight toward me, calm on the surface, but I could see the tension underneath it. Her shoulders were tighter than usual, her eyes sharper, calculating. "You need to fix this," she said quietly the moment she reached me. No greeting, no confusion, just a command. I didn't move. "No," I said. Her expression flickered for a second before settling again. "This isn't funny," she said, lowering her voice further, forcing calm into it. "I'm not joking." She glanced around to make sure no one was close enough to hear clearly. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said. I almost smiled. "No," I replied. "I'm just not hiding it anymore." That was the part she couldn't control, not what I had done, but the fact that it was now visible. She didn't mind what I did for her as long as it stayed invisible. "You helped," she said, her tone sharpening. "That's what family does." "I didn't help," I said. "I ran it." Her eyes hardened immediately. "Don't exaggerate." "I'm not." There was a pause, short but tight, before she leaned closer, her voice dropping into something colder. She told me that if I didn't turn it back on right now, I was going to ruin her. That was the first honest thing she had said all night, not because it was true, but because it revealed what she actually believed. Not that she had taken something from me, but that I owed her the continuation of it. I held her gaze without reacting. I told her that if everything collapsed without me, then it had never been hers to begin with. For a second, she didn't respond, and that silence stretched longer than anything she had said. Because she knew. She knew exactly how much of it depended on me. She tried to reframe it, reminding me that I had promised to help until things stabilized. I corrected her, telling her she had been the one promising that things were already stabilizing, that every time I asked, there was always another reason, another delay, another version of almost there. She insisted it was the same thing. I told her it wasn't. Around us, the room had started moving again, conversations restarting carefully, people pretending not to look while still paying attention. Claire noticed, straightened her posture, and tried one more time, softer now, almost reasonable. She asked me to just log her back in and said we would deal with everything else later. That word again, later, like it always had an endpoint that never came. I told her there was no later. That was when the control slipped completely. Her voice sharpened, accusing me of doing this because I couldn't stand that she had made it. I let that sit there, because it wasn't the truth, but it was the version she needed. I told her I hadn't made her look successful, I had made her look stable, and that those weren't the same thing. She disagreed, but not convincingly. Before she could push further, someone called her away, and she shifted immediately, the performance snapping back into place, thinner now, but still functioning. She told me this wasn't over without looking at me, and I didn't answer, because for the first time in a long time, I understood something she didn't. It already was. I left the ballroom shortly after, not because anyone asked me to, but because there was nothing left for me to do there. Outside, the air felt quieter, real in a way the room inside hadn't been. I stood for a moment, letting the noise fade behind me, and then my phone started vibrating. Claire called first. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. Messages followed, one after another, asking what I had done, telling me the system wasn't working, that this was serious. I looked at the word serious for a moment, thinking about how everything was always serious when it affected her, but never when it affected me. Another message came in, telling me to fix it, and that was when I stopped reading. By the time I got home, the calls had spread. Claire, my mother, my father, notifications stacking over each other like alarms I had trained myself to respond to. This time, I didn't. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and went straight to the folder I had created months earlier. It was where I had been keeping track of everything, not because I planned to use it, but because something in me needed to know I wasn't imagining it. Inside were records of every login, every file change, every report submitted under my name. At first, it had been organization. Then it had become reassurance. And now it was something else entirely. Proof. I scrolled through it slowly, seeing the pattern laid out clearly, date after date, action after action, all tied back to me. Another message came through, telling me that if she lost the client, it would be because of me. I read it once, then said it out loud, because hearing it made it clearer. Even her failure had to belong to me. That was the pattern. That was the structure I had been holding up. I closed the laptop and didn't reopen it to fix anything. The next morning, everything started moving faster. By the time I checked my phone, there were already more messages, but the tone had changed. Less demanding, more emotional, trying to pull me back into something familiar. She reminded me we were family, asked why I was acting like this, suggested I was overreacting. I didn't answer any of them. When my mother called, I did pick up, but the conversation went exactly the way I expected. She asked why I would do something like this in the middle of something important, and I realized she wasn't asking what had happened. She was asking why I had stopped. I told her I had removed Claire's access, and she immediately shifted to how hard Claire had worked, how much this meant, how I should have supported her. I told her I had supported her for 14 months, and that I wasn't taking something away at the worst moment. I was stepping back from something that had never actually stabilized. She said I sounded cold. That part landed, not because it hurt in the moment, but because I recognized it. For years, being warm had meant being available, being flexible, being the solution. I told her I wasn't cold, I was clear. And that seemed to end the conversation more than anything else. By noon, Claire stopped texting. And that worried me more than everything she had said before, because Claire didn't stop. She adapted. And when she adapted, things escalated. That afternoon, an email came through from compliance, and the moment I read the first lines, I understood something I had been avoiding. This wasn't just about helping her anymore. This was about everything she had done and how it all pointed back to me. I read the email twice, then a third time, not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to be sure I wasn't turning it into something bigger than it was. But it wasn't small. It wasn't ambiguous. It was clear in a way that didn't leave room for interpretation. They had flagged activity tied to my credentials that didn't match my assigned work, and they wanted an explanation. Not from Claire, from me. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling something settle into place that had been forming for months without fully taking shape. For 14 months, I had been holding everything together quietly, telling myself it was temporary, manageable, contained. Now it was documented. Now it existed outside of me, and outside of me, it didn't look like help. It looked like responsibility. My phone buzzed again. Claire. I didn't answer. Another message came through almost immediately, asking why compliance was contacting me. Not us. Me. That detail didn't surprise me. It confirmed exactly what I already knew. On paper, everything pointed back to my account, my access, my name. I opened the folder on my laptop again, this time without hesitation. I moved through the files faster now, not revisiting them emotionally, but organizing them with purpose. Dates, timestamps, session logs, file edits, every action that had ever been tied to my credentials. I gathered everything into one place, not because I needed to convince myself anymore, but because I needed to be ready to show someone else. Another message appeared. She told me to fix it. That word again, like nothing had changed, like I would respond the same way I always had. For a moment, I felt the familiar instinct rise, the reflex to step in, smooth things over, adjust the narrative into something safer for her. But this time I recognized it for what it was. Not responsibility, habit. I closed her message without replying and opened a new email. My hands didn't shake. I didn't overthink the wording. I didn't try to soften anything. I simply stated that the activity wasn't part of my assigned work, that my credentials had been used over an extended period of time, and that I was attaching documentation to support that. Then I signed my name and sent it. The moment the email left my outbox, something shifted. Not outside, not yet, but internally. For the first time, I hadn't adjusted the truth to make it easier for someone else to carry. I had just said it. Claire called again. This time, I answered. "What did you say?" she asked immediately, her voice tight. "I told them the truth," I said. There was a brief silence, then she asked what that meant. I explained that I had told them she had been using my account. She reacted quickly, saying I didn't have to say it like that I could have framed it as collaboration, something shared. I told her it wasn't shared. She insisted I was making it worse than it needed to be. I told her this was exactly what it was. She tried to shift again, telling me I was overreacting, that I was scared and just didn't know how to handle it, that if I let her take control of the situation, she could fix it. That part almost worked, not because it made sense, but because it was familiar. For months, I had let her take the lead in conversations like this, trusting that she would resolve things in a way that protected both of us. But this wasn't one of those situations anymore. I told her no. Not louder, not harsher, just final. She said I was throwing her under the bus. I told her I had stepped out of the way. She said that wasn't how anyone would see it. I told her it didn't matter how it was seen, only what was documented. That was when she stopped arguing for a moment, because she knew what the documentation showed. She asked why I hadn't talked to her first. I reminded her that I had, months ago, more than once, that those conversations hadn't changed anything, that this wasn't sudden, it was delayed. Her voice dropped again. She told me I was ruining everything. I told her that if it could be ruined this easily, then it had never been stable to begin with. She didn't respond to that. She just ended the call. The next morning, I received a meeting request from compliance. It wasn't optional. It was scheduled, structured, formal in a way that made it clear this had already moved beyond internal concern into review. I didn't panic. I didn't rehearse what I would say. I didn't try to find a way to explain it that would protect her without damaging me. I just went. The room was neutral, the kind designed to keep emotion out of the conversation. 3 people were already seated when I walked in. They acknowledged me politely, gestured for me to sit, and opened the file in front of them. It was organized, printed, structured. My logs, my records, my documentation, now part of something official. They asked me to confirm whether certain sessions had been initiated by me. I said no. They asked if I had been responsible for specific reports. I said no. They asked how long I had been aware that my credentials were being used this way. I said 14 months. That answer shifted something in the room. They asked why I hadn't stopped it sooner. That was the only question that lingered longer than the others. I could have explained it in terms of family, pressure, expectation, trust. All of that would have been true, but none of it would have mattered in that room. So I gave the only answer that did. I said I should have stopped it, but I didn't. No excuses, no adjustment, just the truth. They nodded, made notes, moved forward. The rest of the meeting followed the same pattern: questions, answers, documentation. No raised voices, no accusations, just a steady movement toward clarity. And clarity, I realized, is what changes everything. Because once something is clear, it can't go back to being vague. By the end of the day, Claire's access had been suspended, not just to my system, but across everything tied to her role. Temporary, pending review, but significant enough that there was no pretending it was a small issue anymore. I didn't contact her. I didn't check on her. I didn't ask what she was going to do next. For the first time, I let the situation exist without stepping into it. That night, she sent one more message. She told me she hoped I was happy. I looked at it for a long time before setting my phone down. I didn't feel happy, but I did feel something else, something quieter, something steadier. Relief. Not because everything was resolved, but because, for the first time, everything was real. By the end of that week, the story had already started to change, not in a loud way, not in the way people announce things or explain them, but in the quiet, controlled spaces where reputations actually shift. Claire stopped posting. No updates, no polished photos, no captions about growth or resilience. Just silence. And for someone like her, silence wasn't neutral. It was damage. I noticed it without trying to. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking what she was doing, but the absence still stood out. People who build their image on visibility don't disappear unless they have to. 3 days after the compliance meeting, I received another email. This one was shorter, cleaner, final in a way the first one hadn't been. They had completed their initial review. The activity tied to my account had been confirmed as outside my assigned responsibilities. There would be no disciplinary action taken against me. I read that line more than once, not because it was complicated, because it was over. Or at least my part in it was. There was another line after that, more neutral in tone but heavier in implication. Further action was being taken regarding other involved parties. They didn't say her name. They didn't need to. I closed the email slowly and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling for a moment. For 14 months, I had been carrying something that didn't belong to me, and now it was gone. Not because I fixed it, not because I managed it, but because I finally stepped out of it. The feeling wasn't dramatic. It wasn't relief in the way people describe relief. It was quieter than that. Like putting something heavy down and realizing your hands don't know what to do without it. Later that afternoon, my manager stopped by my desk. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't ask for a full explanation. He just told me I had handled the situation well, that not everyone chooses clarity when things get complicated. Then he mentioned something else. There was a restructuring coming, a leadership role opening in analytics review. He said I had already been doing work at that level, just without the title. That stayed with me longer than the compliance email, not because it was surprising, but because it confirmed something I had been ignoring. I hadn't been behind. I had been carrying someone else. I told him I would think about it. He nodded, like he already knew the answer. Claire didn't contact me for almost a week. No messages, no calls, nothing. Which said more than anything she had sent before. On the 7th day, my mother called. Her voice was quieter than usual. Not urgent, not emotional, just careful. She asked if I could come by that evening. She didn't explain much, just said Claire was there and that my father wanted to talk. Not to fix things, not to argue, to understand. That was new. When I got there, nothing about the house had changed. Same furniture, same lighting, same framed photos. But the atmosphere was different. Less certain, less controlled. Claire was already sitting at the dining table when I walked in. No laptop, no phone in her hand, no sense of momentum around her. Just stillness. My father stood near the window, arms crossed, watching quietly. My mother hovered nearby, not quite sitting, not quite standing, like she wasn't sure where she belonged in the moment. No one spoke at first. Then my father gestured toward the chair across from Claire. I sat. The silence stretched for a few seconds longer before Claire spoke. "They suspended me," she said. Her voice was flat, not dramatic, not defensive, just tired. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't look like someone in control. "They're reviewing everything," she added. "All my work." My father shifted slightly and asked her if it was true. Not angrily, not accusing, just directly. Claire hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." That one word changed the room, because it wasn't a story anymore. It was fact. My mother looked down. My father nodded once, absorbing it without reacting outwardly. Claire turned back to me. "I was going to fix it," she said. I held her gaze. "You needed more time," I replied. She let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "I needed more than that," she admitted. That was the first time she said something that didn't feel like a defense. The room went quiet again. Then my mother stepped in, softly, asking if we could move forward, if we could just put it behind us. That was familiar. The instinct to skip over the part that mattered most and go straight to something comfortable. I shook my head. No, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Claire looked at me, a little more directly now. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, "The truth." She swallowed, then nodded. "I lied," she said. Simple, clear, no qualifiers. I told clients the system was mine. I told them I had everything under control. I told Mom and Dad I didn't need help. She paused. "I used your account because it worked, because it made everything look stable. And I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed." My father looked away. My mother covered her mouth. I didn't move. "And when I couldn't?" I asked. She met my eyes. "I panicked," she said. Another pause. "And I blamed you." There was no defensiveness in it this time, just acknowledgement. Something inside me shifted then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something lighter. Because the truth, once it's said out loud, doesn't sit on you the same way anymore. I reached into my bag and took out a single sheet of paper, folded, simple. I placed it on the table between us. Claire frowned slightly. "What is that?" "A boundary," I said. She blinked, like the word didn't quite land. I told her clearly, without reading from the page, that I wasn't sharing access to anything anymore. That I wasn't responsible for her work, her deadlines, or the consequences of her decisions. That I wouldn't step in if something went wrong, and I wouldn't respond to pressure or guilt about it. She listened, really listened. Then she shook her head slightly. "This is a lot." "It's necessary," I said. My father reached over, picked up the paper, and read it quietly. Then he nodded and said it was reasonable. That surprised her more than anything I had said. She looked at him, then back at me. "I might lose everything," she said. My father answered before I could. "Then you deal with that." No hesitation, no softening. Claire's shoulders dropped slightly, not dramatically, just enough to show something had shifted. She looked back at the paper, then at me. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. That was different. Not defensive, not manipulative, just honest. For a moment, I felt the old instinct again, the urge to explain, to guide, to help her figure it out. And for the first time, I didn't follow it. "That's not my responsibility anymore," I said. She nodded slowly. It took a second, but she understood, and that mattered more than anything else in that moment. A couple of months later, everything settled into something new. Claire lost her position. Quietly, no announcement, no explanation, just replaced. She moved into a smaller place, sold what she didn't need, and started over in a way she had never had to before. She didn't call me to fix anything. Not once. One evening, I received a message, a payment confirmation, a small amount, with a short note saying it wasn't much, but it was a start. I looked at it for a long time. Then I replied with 2 words. Keep going. That was all. No encouragement, no emotion, no reopening of anything that had been closed. Just acknowledgement. Because this time, whatever she built next would have to stand on its own. As for me, I took the role my manager offered, moved into a position I had already been doing without realizing it, started making decisions without checking who else they would affect first. And for the first time in a long time, I stopped measuring my value by how much I could hold together for someone else. I didn't destroy her. I just stopped holding her up. And when something collapses without you, it tells you everything you need to know about who was really building it. Some people will call that cold, some will call it selfish. But the truth is simpler than that. If someone needs you to disappear so they can succeed, then what they built was never real. And walking away from that isn't betrayal. It's freedom.